When I first got into mixed martial arts, I was taekwondo head kicks and all kinds of stuff. I would draw upon a much wider range of martial arts techniques. When I got up closer to the UFC level and into the UFC, I cut down a lot of the stuff that I used to use, and I went to, okay, Muay Thai works, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu works, and wrestling works. So I'll stick with those three because now I'm at the top level. I have to take less risks. I have to refine my skill set to what I know works. So that worked for a short while in mixed martial arts. But then you get guys like Machida that come through, or a Gunnar Nelson, or a Wonder Boy, or a John Jones that rewrite the script. And Conor is one of those guys that draws upon techniques that most people don't feel comfortable trying. And I feel like over the years, and boxing is far more set in its way than mixed martial arts. Boxers over the years have established the ways that you need to train and the techniques that you need to use that work. And it's become so refined that a lot of them struggle to look outside of that, or even not necessarily struggle to look outside of it, but struggle to step outside of it and take a risk and try something different. Now, if you go way back into Floyd's career, there was a fight, I believe it was his 29th fight against Emmanuel Augustus Burton. Emmanuel Augustus Burton was a wild man. His nickname was the Drunken Master because he didn't move like anybody else. And you watch that fight, Floyd was coming out to try and knock him out, and Emmanuel Augustus was taking his best shots and was catching him with all kinds of awkward stuff. And the same thing with the Maidana fight. Now, Floyd got hit more against Maidana than he had any other opponent on his record at that point. And that was partly because Maidana was throwing things from all kinds of angles. There were even some hammer fists coming over the top against the ropes in that one. So every now and then, just throw a few new techniques in there and see what sticks. And Lomachenko uses footwork from his old dancing days. He strips the guard to punch. There are a lot of unusual things that Lomachenko does, and people consider him as about pound for pound best on the planet now. He's stepping outside of the boxing mindset and trying new things. And Conor can bring a whole new load of stuff to the table, which Lomachenko is probably not considered.
Hello, everyone. It is that time. It is the Monday before the big one, Mayweather versus McGregor, and this is your MMAfighting.com Monday morning analyst preview. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Luke Thomas. I appreciate you guys tuning in. As you can see already from the front end, this one's going to be a little bit different than normal. Normally on the Monday morning analyst, we have three parts, as you know. An overview of the weekend, we sort of look at things in multimedia in the second segment, and then we take a look at what's coming up ahead in the third segment. None of that is on today. Here's what we're going to do today. You already saw Dan Hardy speak. He's not the only one. You guys remember back in July, I asked you for questions. What did you have on your mind about Mayweather McGregor? And not just any old question, technique questions. And not just technique questions, good faith questions. One of the sort of sad, unfortunate realities of this fight is that everyone thinks it's a joke and that there's nothing at all to be learned from it. And I'm not saying there's not elements to this bout that aren't a little bit farcical, but it's just not true that there's nothing to not learn. There's actually a ton to learn. There's a lot of things we really don't know about boxing, what boxing doesn't know about MMA. We're trying to bridge that gap here a little bit so we can raise our collective understanding of the two sports. And what better time to do that when an MMA fighter is going to be fighting a boxer, granted, in boxing, but nevertheless, the two worlds crossing. So you guys sent me a bunch of questions, and here's what happened. They ended up all being really good, but a lot of them were the same. Not exactly the same, but here's my point. A lot of them dealt with the clinch. A lot of them dealt with stances, stance switching, that kind of thing. So I said, man, I got to put these all together and I got to find a good team of experts. So here's what I did. None of this is my analysis, zero. These are all your questions, all put together, edited down for sort of reasonability's sake. And look at the cast of trainers who I spoke to. I had to get the experts. It's your questions, but it's not my analysis. We're talking to the experts. And who are our experts? Well, we've got 6 of them today. You already saw Dan Hardy, UFC analyst as well as a UFC fighter, still technically, by the way. Of course, I spoke to many other members of the MMA community. Stephen Wright out of War Room MMA in Texas. You might know him as Johnny Hendricks' old striking coach, did a lot of work with Team Takedown. On top of that, you guys know what time it is. Brandon Gibson out of Jackson Wink MMA is here. Plus, I spoke to Paul Felder, a UFC lightweight and a bit of a revelatory experience, an incredible analyst on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. And I also went to the boxing community as well, because they do have input here. I spoke to Barry Hunter, who is sort of the head trainer at the Headbangers Gym here in Washington, D.C., and I spoke to his star pupil, a WBA welterweight champion of the world, Lamont Peterson, a two-weight world champion, by the way. So plenty of expertise for a lot of really good questions. This is the big one, folks. We're here. Fight week starts now. And without further ado, here is your Mayweather versus McGregor preview on MMAfighting.com.
When he comes with a plan, a game plan, despite of what his opponent may do, he has a tendency to stick to his plan and give it time to develop. Whereas though a lot of fighters that go into a fight with a game plan, if they get hit a couple of times, that plan go out the window. They abandon the plan too fast. Whereas though in Floyd's case, he gives the plan time to develop, and he got a will to win. Does very good against aggressive fighters. If you look at his past history in boxing, the majority of fighters that attack Floyd, he was able to take them into them deep waters and drown them. So I think that along with following his game plan, along with his will to win, I think he does very good against fighters that are very aggressive towards him.
But I'll say mental stamina. Most people, when you're talking about stamina, you're always talking about the lung capacity and how long you can go. But how long he can concentrate, it's a big asset of his, and that's what he used. Most times, going through a 12-round fight, you're going to get tired. Even in basketball, football, you mentally get tired. He never stopped concentrating. His mental stamina is the best option in boxing. So that's the thing that I feel like he'll concentrate, all the way through. Don't get hit with any big shots, win the fight.
His ability to be relaxed under the pressure and in the moment, and the way he just rolls with everything, he really does get guys that throw a million punches at him. I think everybody's kind of forgetting that he's had guys in there that try to brawl with him, that try to go crazy and be in his face the whole time. That isn't anything new for him. And I think just his ability to see things coming before they are even fully extended yet. He's already slipping. He's already weaving. He's already thinking about how to get the hell out of there and land his shot. That's what impresses me, because it just slipping punches is so freaking hard, man. Anybody that's ever really boxed or sparred or done any kind of combat, it's to see a guy that at that level throwing something and be able to move up and land. That's just years of practice and natural ability.
Excellent footwork. He's been in boxing since maybe he was 4 years old. You're not going to box that long and not have good footwork. If you're a good athlete, you've been around something for a long time, you're going to pick up good footwork. I'm sure his cardio is pretty good, so he's going to have excellent footwork. And it's decent. He's not going to overdo it, but he might not move too much in this fight.
Why not?
It'll probably be safer to stay closer. Like I said, it's many elements to boxing, and you think that McGregor is the big puncher, he want to hit you, he should move, but you got to figure out and look how those punches are coming. And a lot of McGregor punches, from what I'm saying, his straight left is pretty good and solid straight, but all the rest are kind of wide. And if you're moving around and you're pulling back and the punching wide, a lot of times you're going to run right into it. So you might be here punching through swinging and it kind of hit you. If you're close, all of those punches are going to kind of go over your head, around you. So I look for Floyd to try to hold his ground, show that you're not going to just overwhelm me. I think with McGregor, it'll be, if he's coming in and he's launching in and Floyd's going back, I can see him getting caught from one of those straight shots if he's pulling back. I'm sure Floyd knows this. So I think he'll try to stay put, hold his ground, and take that element away that McGregor thinks that he has, that, I can overwhelm him. Floyd gonna hold his ground.
Well, I would say that there's going to be in a boxing match, I wouldn't lean on the size of glove as much, because if you go back in the day to even like a Jack Johnson type days, those were pretty much mittens that they were wearing back in the day. So I would say it's more the way that the feet are positioned. I think that that's going to come into play a lot more. Just the way boxers turn and move. That will show up in the fight way more than the difference between 8 10-ounce gloves. Just from watching kickboxing and boxing through the years, I've seen both. Really, the purpose of your glove is to protect your hand. You know, like that's the purpose of having boxing gloves on. They're not for the other guy's safety. In the end, we understand it's combat sport, but I really think and I truly believe that there will be very little difference between a 10 and an 8 ounce.
Yeah, other than the 2 ounces, you know, of course 10 ounces got a little bit more cushion than 8 ounce gloves. But honestly, to me, and then as the match go on, you know, gloves get wet, sweat and everything, so I add a little bit more, you know, extra weight. And that's about it.
I know there's been talk about the 8-ounce gloves. I think that's a smokescreen. I think it's all nonsense to kind of give Conor the impression that Floyd's really coming to fight, because then he wants those early rounds hard out of Conor, which he's probably not going to get. The 10-ounce gloves offer a little more padding. I mean, 8 to 10-ounce gloves, there is for me a difference. I use 8s for pads. If I put 10-ounce gloves on, they feel like 14s after I've been wearing 8s. So there's much more bulk there to hide behind. So the bigger gloves suit Floyd. Obviously, he thinks defense first as well. So he won't step outside of his defensive shell until he feels like he's safe to do so.
An advantage Conor's going to have that a lot of MMA fighters have a lot of strength in is in the clinch using head position. I'm not saying head butts, I'm saying head position. You know, MMA fighters are good at getting low, getting under guys' chin, using their head pressure, and I could see Conor looking to tie up Floyd off his head pressure.
They're positions that Conor knows how to exploit. Even if he needs to get his arms out of those positions, you know, understanding how to get your elbows back in, how to limp arm out and create space. It is, I think, really Conor has the biggest strength, the inside fighting. And I also think it's interesting that he brought in Joe Cortez as a referee for his sparring, because Joe Cortez obviously was the referee in the Hatton fight with Mayweather, and there was a lot of talk after that about how much he interfered with that fight. So I think what Conor's done is he's brought in a referee to give him the worst case scenario, because I think he actually wants to be clinching quite a bit. So I think it bodes well for him in the clinch. He's obviously going to be the bigger, stronger man. The longer he can spend in the clinch, the more tired Floyd will become. And I think, you know, if Floyd's constantly stepping in and clinching, I think that shows a lack of ability to deal with Conor.
I'll expect Floyd to avoid it. He will, if any time they get tangled up, the best thing to do in this, and I just a tactic of mine, don't fight against him. Let him use his energy. He want to push me this way, do that. Ref's going to come in eventually and stop it. Save your energy, allow him to waste his. If you can't win that tussle against someone and you fighting and you're the one getting worn down, then you don't get yourself involved. If you want to grab and hold, you just kind of walk and give into it a little bit. Let him use his energy, don't use yours.
Conor can lean on him a little bit and just be a little bit of a dick in the clinch and kind of just dirty box him and not be illegal, but just barely do enough where the ref keeps stopping him and wear on Floyd's neck a little bit and kind of piss him off. I think that size will wear on Floyd in the later rounds, and maybe Conor can conserve a little energy in there because he's used to the clinch. He's used to that grinding kind of MMA style. So that might be something that he can kind of lean on Floyd and get him on the ropes if he can keep him there.
I think that it helps him as long as he can produce consistent offense from it. You know, in MMA, one of his best tricks is he can get you to play the game. He can make you first. He can make you the guy to make the mistake. And he's going against a guy who's won every single time doing just that. You know, just playing, being patient, having no problem winning around, you know, with 14 shots or 15 shots or even 12 shots. He's as patient as it comes when you're talking to Mayweather. So as far as McGregor goes, Mayweather's just going to wait until he gets his opportunity. So the movement, it might be a different look for him, but I don't think he'll fall for it as much just because he's going to wait on his spot anyways. I think McGregor would have a much better time with a guy like an Andre Bertle, or a guy who kind of like uses their athleticism to kind of try to force offense, that would be a person that would fall into what McGregor does a little bit more. But if you got a guy who's just going to wait, he'll just watch the movement until you stop, because he knows where your position, he knows the way your body has to be to throw an effective strike. So Mayweather's just going to wait for that moment. So definitely expect 4 or 5, maybe even 6 rounds where you just like, I can't believe I'm watching this because there's almost nothing going on. Mayweather's going to wait for his moment. And as far as McGregor goes in that same spot, clearly, if he's going to use it, his best benefit is to use it to creep himself into physical positions where he can use the weight, lean on him a little bit. Because, I mean, right now, McGregor's huge. So I would use that footwork to get into spots where I can enter and not be in as much, danger as I get into clinch spots, beat the body up, dirty box, and so on.
I think it's something that isn't going to hinder him initially. I think the look Conor brings is the range, the distance, the angles may take Floyd a little bit of time to process and make his adjustments. I think it may be a little bit like Floyd against Ricky Hatton. Ricky Hatton was a guy that liked to throw combinations, kind of leaping in from a further range. The first few early rounds of that fight, Ricky Hatton found some success in his blitzes and his pressure and his long-range attacks. But once Floyd got dialed into that, he started finding a lot of counter crosses, intercepting Hatton's forward motion, and then finally put him away with that check left hook and left hand face forward in the rope. So I'm not saying that's the ending, but as far as the range of Floyd's defense and being able to process it and start finding his counters, I think that is going to be a big factor.
I think the range is the most important thing here. Conor's used to fighting outside of punching range, whereas obviously in boxing, most people that are facing Floyd, they'll comfortably move into boxing range to start contending with him. I would imagine that Conor's going to maintain that distance and use his ability to cover distance very quickly. In this fight, he can crash forward with that left hand and not worry about being clinched and taken down. So there can be an element of recklessness to the way he throws that power. If he has Floyd backed up into a place where he knows that Floyd's going to struggle to get away from that left hand, he can unload and crash into the clinch because he doesn't have to worry about the aftermath of being tied up.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's one of the things that's going to be Conor's advantage is Floyd's used to fighting, yes, the best boxers in the world. But suddenly you're not fighting a guy who's purely a boxer. You're fighting a guy who likes to think of himself as a martial artist, and he's got that in and out kind of waits for you to kind of rush in style, and his hands aren't the same placement. He doesn't block and counter the same way that traditional boxers do. So I think the rhythm changes will be something that'll affect Floyd a little bit. Something that even when I box boxers, even if they're getting the better of some rounds, I land some shots just because of my MMA style. So that's something that I'm sure Conor and his team have been working on.
Sure. Well, the biggest thing is the way that a boxer anchors themselves. The legs can be a little bit in a line, so they can be. And again, some of the European stylists, they're even longer. So you look at a Mikkel Kessler. Mikkel Kessler's got a really wide base in his stance. So by wide, I mean the distance between his back foot and his front foot, and it allows him to pivot on the hips and it allows him to pump that mean jab. So for a boxer, they're used to things that allows their hips to pivot and for them to come under strike fully. So they can really go under hooks and they can really step to the outside. Like the way their body is made, they are built to have exchanges. They're built to win in the pocket. Whereas if you look at a mixed martial artist, they've got to be conscious of things like kicks and takedowns. Giving up your lead leg, that's not the best thing, especially go against a Ben Askren type. You give that lead leg up, he just gets a piece of it. And even if you've got good takedown defense, the way he can chain things together, you're going down. So in that position, mixed martial artists, they are more conscious of a kick could be coming, a takedown could be coming. There's more things that their legs have got to worry about. So I would say their style can be more of a standard European kickboxing style in terms of they're not too high. They've got a good, sometimes they can have a bounce about it, but when they're in exchange range, they more than likely still want to have their legs in a position where they can kick return, check kicks, and then defend the takedowns. It's rare that you see someone who's got the lead leg forward and the right foot almost hidden behind it in mixed martial arts. You can do it. Like a BJ Penn, his original style used to be that way a little bit, but you've got to throw a lot of offense if you're going to be in that position. Conor, at this point, will play with it here and there, but for the most part, he can do spin kicks, and, you know, his stance that he had for the second Diaz fight, that allowed him to kick more. So, and again, the offense is another thing that comes into play. It's way easier to rip a right low kick or a left low kick when you've got a stance where your legs aren't super close together, but a little bit closer than it would when you would see a boxer. So I'd say that'd be the main thing. Your MMA stance is going to prepare you for the actions that happen, takedowns, kicks, checks, and so on. And your boxing stance is really just to prepare you to wire, stay in the pocket, roll punches, play a full-blown, prepared for hand-to-hand combat type position.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think we're seeing more and more boxers use it. I was going back to Willie Pep or Roy Jones Jr. or Lomachenko now. There's a lot of fighters that are very effective with stance switches. Even Tyson up against the ropes uses a lot of stance switches to bring his power hand forward. His famous body hook uppercuts. As far as forced parries, absolutely. Flanking from the sides, using forced parries, coming over the top. That's something we see a lot of success with in K1 style kickboxing. Overeem's a beast at it and has used a lot in his MMA career. So, can Conor break Floyd's shell with a forced parry? Yeah, absolutely, especially off a good angle. Yeah. Is it going to work for 36 minutes? I think Floyd may start finding his ways to counter that.
And if you watch McGregor's open workout stuff, he was switching his stances a lot. And that might be something that they're working on, is kind of throwing Floyd off just a little bit by going back and forth between southpaw and orthodox. And that's something I know in MMA we work a lot on, is hand fighting, because there are so many level changes and things that we can get away with because we're not just boxing each other. And if he can start doing that, yeah, I do it with elbows as opposed to like blocking down and throwing punches. But for McGregor's case, he might be able to switch, angle off, push that way, throw his right hand, switch back, throw his left hand. So yeah, that's a good question / inquiry there. Yeah, I think hand fighting and switching stances is something he is going to do. I really do. I think he is going to go back and forth.
And the switching stance thing, I think it's important for Conor to do that. Now, Floyd made an interesting comment about that. He said it's a waste of energy. I don't know whether there's an understanding in boxing that constantly switching your stance is a drain of your cardiovascular system. I've not heard that before. I certainly didn't feel that myself. It's only an issue if you're switching stance in range, and I don't think Conor would be stupid enough to do that. But the benefit in switching stance is that, as I was saying earlier, Floyd has to adapt when he's fighting a southpaw. And it takes him a little time to adapt. He's fought 7 southpaws in 49 fights. Bob Arum talked about the fact that he does like to avoid southpaws if possible, because there is a level of adaptability that is needed in those fights. And we've seen it in Floyd's fights against southpaws. So whenever you're fighting a guy who's a southpaw, I'm an orthodox fighter. If I'm fighting a southpaw, I know they have a series of tools that they're going to be drawing upon. If they switch to orthodox, I know immediately they've got a whole new set of tools to play with. It changes the landscape of the fight. So every time Conor switches his stance, Floyd has to reset. Now the question will be in the fight, if Conor's switching from southpaw to orthodox, which one is most uncomfortable for Floyd? If he's finding that the switching is uncomfortable, then keep it up. But if he's finding every time he's switching to orthodox he's getting lit up, obviously you've got to stick with southpaw, and vice versa. So that's all very much down to how the fight plays out itself. But I don't see any drawback to switching stances. And it's something that Floyd will probably not likely be getting used to in training, let alone in a boxing match.
So clearly the rules are the same for angles. Basically, the way I explain angles to my students is either both your legs split one of their legs, or both of your hips split one of their hips. That's usually the person that has the angle. So if I throw 1-2 and I step to the right, my goal in stepping to the right, especially if I slide step, is when I look at you, your right hand can't turn and get me. You've got to move your left leg to square up and find me again. I've won that angle in that particular spot. So in boxing and in MMA, that is pretty much the same. Like they both want to get on the shoulder, make the other person shoot a shot that they're not prepared for. So sometimes you hear the term hook with a hooker. Like, it's not a good thing to play with that with a guy who knows how to play that game full. Castillo and Corrales, perfect example. They said Corrales was hooking with a hooker. And you get in those spots, it's a lot harder to win those battles to people who know, okay, I'm sitting in the right spot. If we shoot at the same time, I'm going to win that. So in MMA, because MMA, for the most part, it's growing. You're seeing it more and more. You saw it in the Ortega fight the other day. You see it in other fights. Exchanging is starting to happen a lot more at the highest level of mixed martial arts, which means that you're going to see a lot more people when they angle themselves, they're angling themselves just a little bit as opposed to full escapes. Right now, MMA's got full escapes. Usually people get their offense, jab, jab, cross, bail to the other side. Old school GSP style. That's really what he's known for. Jab, jab, cross, double jab, win the jab roll, then move. Win the jab, then move, then double leg. Like, he plays it all off of that distance game. But as far as pure boxing goes, as far as the angles of that goes, they really want to position themselves where they can throw a lot of shots on an angle. Whereas in boxing, we are in MMA, we like to position ourselves where maybe we can get one clean one. You know, some people talking about the small gloves. Really, it's a combination of small gloves and the footwork, where your feet are positioned. So I would say the biggest thing for me as a coach, when I play with my boxers, when we play angles, we get to spots and we throw flurries when we get to that spots. When we get to those spots. When I get to mixed martial artists, I try to do the same thing, but I'm also really conscious of, man, the clinch might be available if we're sitting here. The takedown might be available if I've got this side. So you really have to, so many more things are open as far as what you can do in the totality of mixed martial arts in an angle, whereas in boxing, not as many things is open just because it's about the exchanges. So when you get to your spots, you just want to let your hands go. So I would say those are the most significant differences.
I think it comes down to the different energy sources we use as mixed martial artists. MMA guys aren't doing crazy amounts of road work. We're not on our toes for 36 minutes. We need to be ready to grapple and to kick and to box and to clinch, to wrestle. All of those require very different muscle groups, energy sources, and boxing is a very different sport, much more anaerobic. It's going to be interesting to see, Conor going from 3-5s to 5-5s to 12 3s. And Floyd's been fighting 12-round bouts for 20 years. Floyd definitely has a boxing conditioning element, but I think age is also going to come into play. We'll see, 29-year-old Conor probably, close to his physical peak to 40-year-old Floyd.
Honestly, the biggest problem to me is stamina. Being able to the pace of boxing is different from MMA. So you got 5 rounds, I think it's 5 rounds.
For championship.
Yeah, 5-minute rounds, and kind of go, all out a lot of times. And with boxing, it's 12 rounds, and you have to, try to win as many rounds as you can. So the pace is much slower. And if you come out fast a lot of times, spend your energy in the first 3-4 rounds, it's tough. And honestly, Mayweather is the master at that, waiting people out. He's stayed defensively for the most part. He's not going to take any chances to get knocked out from McGregor, so I just think that he'll wait it out. McGregor will get tired, and Floyd will take over in the boxing ring. But of course, if they went in the octagon, it'd be a different story.
I've got to think Floyd, and I don't necessarily think that's down to training or down to anything really other than experience. There's definitely an art to pacing yourself over 12 rounds, and that's my concern with Conor, because we've not really seen Conor strategically pace himself over 5 rounds in an MMA fight. Now, I know that there's a lot more going on in an MMA fight, but at those higher levels, it's a big part of the fight. You've got to look at guys like GSP and Demetrius Johnson, who are excellent over 5 rounds. They understand how to control that pace, and I haven't seen that from Conor yet. Even in the 5-rounder against Nate Diaz, I still feel like he had moments where he looked good, he had moments where he looked like he was really struggling. So the advantage here is purely down to experience. Floyd knows how to rest in a boxing ring. He knows how how to find ways to recover and recuperate if he needs to. But then at the same time, he's been doing this for so long now. His base level of conditioning is perfectly tailored to a boxing match. And we know he fights over 12 rounds. That's very comfortable for him. And there's not really a great deal of drop-off in his fights, whereas we see that, like in the Maidana fight, he came out like a bull in a china shop, but there's a drop-off there. Whereas Floyd, he knows how to engage and how to rest. And we've not seen Conor do that in MMA, let alone boxing. So I would say Floyd has the advantage there.
He'll use it, but not too much, because with southpaws, it's known that it is an opening, and that's only because Floyd's here, he's here, and a lot of times he's in this position to get away from a right hand coming in, and if it's an orthodox fighter, the right hand's coming in on his side, straight right. You're never going to hit him. If you do this, any movement, and that right hand is off target. But southpaw, their backhand is their strip hand is coming this way. So with him trying to do that, he still has that angle to land it. He won't go to it too much. It's only natural for him to do it, but I'm sure he won't feel comfortable, and he'll try to switch it up and either go hands up or even hands down so he can see the shots coming down.
I think you'll see it no matter what, because that's something Floyd has been using his whole career, man. And he's so good at just kind of rolling with those punches. I think, however, that for Conor's sake, that would be the best thing if Floyd tries to just make him look stupid with that, and Conor can catch him with those 8-ounce gloves. That would be a big opportunity, especially if he tries to do that on the ropes and kind of just bob and weave with everything. Conor's a different kind of puncher, and he's used to hitting guys with little gloves. So if he touches him when he's doing one of those, roll throughs, that would be a great time for him to maybe hurt him.
It's not as effective against southpaws, definitely not. But in this fight, I don't think it makes too much of a difference. I think that Floyd is going to be working. I think he's going to be using much more of a traditional boxing defense. He can't use the shoulder roll defense that he normally uses, because he does create a pocket for Conor's left hand there. So whenever Floyd's looking at being the aggressor or looking at moving forward, you see him put his hands up and he moves forward behind a traditional guard. And I would expect that. The counter to that, obviously, though, is that Conor is a big, heavy hitter. So working out on the arms and the gloves and the shoulders of Floyd will pay dividends later in the round. So I don't think Conor necessarily has to worry too much about where he's targeting and if he is hitting the guard.
His best punch might be his jab to the body.
Why?
And it's because he always get people to come to him. So he's kind of laid back, and you're kind of using your force. He's using your force against you. You're coming in fast, trying to close in on him, and all he's doing is sticking it out. And they call it a stab to the body, because it actually do feel like someone stabbing you. Because it's stopping your whole momentum, stopping the person from engaging on them, and it takes a lot of air out you. So over and over again, this is a shot that's pretty hard, sturdy for him. And people don't give him credit for being strong, but he's actually physically strong. He don't take chances on knockouts, so they relate to knockouts and punching power to strength, natural strength. Of course, he's not going to be stronger than McGregor, but he do have natural strength.
I think his range is going to be the biggest factor in that area. As far as MMA striking goes, Conor really does set up a lot of his effective strikes and combinations from a far range. I think Mayweather can bring a different distance and range than what traditional boxers do. And that may be one area that he's able to nullify Floyd's great jab to the body.
If you're southpaw to orthodox, that lead hand is always there to use that check hook. So every time Floyd's going to be level changing to step in with that jab, he's going to be leaving that side of his face open. The left side of his face will be open to the short right hook of Conor. And we've seen him use that check hook a lot of the time to set up his left hand. So my concern about that is every time Floyd's level changing, he's going to be exposing himself. I actually think Floyd's not going to lead with the jab very much at all. I think what we'll see him do is What he's done against other southpaws in the past, where he kind of leans forward, he actually squares his shoulders up, which means that he can lead with the right hand. He's got a very, very fast counter right hand, and if anything, that's going to be the biggest problem for Conor, because as Conor throws his left hand, he's got a lot of wind up. He leaves himself open, and because he covers so much distance, there's time there for Floyd to spot that and throw that short right hand to stifle it. So I actually think that's going to be his best weapon in this. I think the jab to the body will leave him open too much.
For sure. Well, the big thing for him is use his paw jab. Doesn't necessarily need to connect. Just show that there's something coming out there. That way he's not closing the distance naked. He's not going in there. You want to make sure you walk in, you don't want to run into something because you're in a hurry or because you're, frustrated. That's the biggest thing that happens to people who fight both of these gentlemen. Usually you'll see the other athlete at some period of time get frustrated and say, I just need to hit him, and a lot of people don't remember this, but when Alvarez, he had that really rough start in the last minute of the fight with Conor, I thought that he got to what was their original game plan. I thought that he was playing with kicks and he wasn't in a hurry and he was able to find success right at the end of the round. But then the lights are on you, the crowd's on you, you feel you're down, you've given up what I call the sexy shots, the shots that the crowd remembers. In that moment, athletes forget about it and they go, whatever, I'm just going to close the distance, I'm going to throw big shots, I'm going to let my hands go. Something good's going to happen. If I just hit him, something good's going to happen. And then you fall for the trap, and then Conor was able to get the stoppage after that. Mayweather will never do that. He will never, ever be the kind of person to be like, oh, man, I'm down. Let me get in there and start throwing some exchanges so I get myself back in the fight. That's not going to happen. Conor, to make sure that he doesn't run into something, he needs to use the paw jab. What I mean by paw jab is when you come in, don't necessarily hit the shoulder. Maybe you throw a jab at the shoulder. Throw a jab at the high right eye. Throw a jab at the eyebrows. No intention of scoring. Just put something in the face to make him back up. Make him back up, and that way you don't close the distance. Also use post hand. If you like Israel Adesanya, he plays with the post a lot. Extends the left hand, puts strikes behind it. Makes people be offensive. Makes people move. Play with your post hand. Play with your paw hand. That's going to be the best way to close the distance. But if you try to close the distance with just a pure aggression and you think it's going to work to your benefit, it's just Mayweather's not the guy for that. There might be some people where you can throw them off with, okay, I can get wide and I can throw these shots and something good's going to come my way. Mayweather ain't that guy.
Absolutely. I've seen a lot of MMA fighters that have different range, different footwork, different levels, throw some boxers off. I've seen a lot of pro boxers come in through Jackson's MMA and have very hard times adjusting to MMA fighters. I've also seen a lot of pro boxers come in, like Austin Trout, a man that fought Canelo, a man that beat Cotto. I saw Austin Trout come in and run circles around our guys, beat him up at every turn. So, I think there's a million cases that we could show MMA fighters giving a boxer some trouble initially, and then just as many cases of, or maybe not just as many, far more so, boxers giving MMA guys trouble in pure boxing. I do think Conor's distance, angles, feints, movement can throw Floyd off initially, but Floyd's the greatest defensive fighter of his generation. He's made a career of making adjustments through fights, making tactical adjustments, finding his counters, and it's going to be interesting to see Conor box. He may come in very different stylistically than he's shown in his MMA fights, and so much of his success in his MMA bouts have really stemmed off his ability to set up his kicks and use his hips to draw his opponent's guard down a little bit. Even the fights he's very famous for his combination punching, earlier in the bouts were set up off his kicks. So I think the bigger adjustment is going to be, how does Conor find his boxing combinations? How does he set up his power? How does he set up his feints without the use of his lower body movement? I think the biggest thing is the battlefield, right? The UFC octagon is a much larger arena to fight in. 8 sides compared to 4. I'm not exactly sure of the boxing they're going to be fighting in, but it does take very different footwork. I think early on, some of the wide flanks, stance switching can be used to cut off the ring, but the best boxers have tighter footwork than the best MMA guys. Boxing really is about tight pivots, being able to get off the rope, being able to be out of the corner, and making the adjustments to trap and keep your opponents on the ropes and in the corner. I think Conor probably has good offensive footwork that can take the ring away from Floyd early on. I'm more intrigued with seeing Conor's defensive footwork. How is Conor going to get out of the corner? How is Conor going to get his back off the ropes? And how is he going to be able to stay in the center of the ring? So yeah, offensively, I think MMA guys have great footwork. Defensively, in a boxing setting, I think that's going to be an area that Conor's going to really have to show that he's made a lot of improvements.
No, I think that's one of the things that is completely different. Our stance is completely different because we're using our legs and our knees, especially a guy like me. I'm much more forward facing when I fight because I throw so many kicks, knees, and elbows. That's all coming, you can't be in that sideways stance. A lot of boxing and the footwork and the angles are off of that almost more of a narrow stance because they're protecting themselves. They can only get hit to the head and body. They don't have to worry about dropping too low and getting kicked in the face. So, just the whole posture is completely different. And Floyd really takes full advantage of that. He has that like Philly shell that he kind of does and kind of shoulder rolls everything. And you can't do that in MMA. You're going to eat a head kick all day.
I think it'll be tough because if you cut off the ring, Mayweather's just going to go ahead and find his spot on the ropes. He'll just go ahead and choose it. If you're going to cut it off, he'll go, okay, we'll fight right here, and he'll stop moving. Your best way to cut off the ropes as far as angles goes is really to just let him have offense and then pursue after the offense. Really off the jab more than the right hand. One of Mayweather's best techniques is to throw the right hand and move his left foot forward and then back leg out. So basically, for those who are wondering what I'm talking about, if you use your left foot to close the distance when you throw your power hand strike, you have a bail because you've already positioned yourself to the outside, particularly if you're talking about orthodox southpaw. So when you drop that right hand down the middle, you get the left leg to the outside. Not only is that to your benefit as far as scoring the clean strike, but if you then back leg out, which means you move your right leg out in a pivoting position to kind of move you away, you can then go do that and get into a shuffle that will allow you to escape. So when Conor sees Mayweather's right hand coming, it is to his benefit to just step back. Don't pursue, just step back. But if you got Mayweather doubling up a jab or playing with a single, that's going to be your best time to take the jab and then choose where you want to try to find your angle. So for him, I would say take the jab, step back just slightly to what would be his right, and wait. If he can get Mayweather to move off to his left-hand side, that might be an opportunity for him to use those long arms and to get a score. But the biggest thing is it's really going to be who can be the most patient guy. I really think that that's going to matter a lot as far as who determines the rounds. So I think that that's where the footwork really comes into play. But actually cutting off the ring successfully, backing him in a corner, doing what Castillo did, doing what Jesus Chavez did, that's going to be really, really difficult to a guy who's usually used to fighting mixed martial arts.
Yeah, I think he's got to go to the body. Like, just because you got 12 rounds of boxing, you can't just headhunt. If Floyd's expecting you to come after him with big punches. But I don't know, with a guy with the experience of Mayweather, he's been on those ropes so many times with guys punching him. I don't know if punching his arms is going to really change any game for Conor. I don't think that's something that's going to make a big difference. But I do think he's got to, like we talked about, dirty box, weigh on him. And in that, attack the body and just use weird angles and kind of try to bully him a little bit.
Yeah, us MMA fighters have a very defensive approach. We don't have 8-ounce gloves or 10-ounce gloves to be able to cover up on. You see guys like Rampage Jackson able to cover all the way behind their head because MMA gloves are so small. Or you see a lot of MMA fighters like framing out with a large guarded block, potential kicks behind punches. We also don't do a lot of rolls. That's a good way to get kneed in the head. So there's a lot of slips, but most of the defense in MMA is dependent on hand fighting and range and the ability to tie up into a clinch quickly. So yeah, is Mayweather going to be, or is McGregor going to be able to slip and roll and dodge and parry and evade all of Mayweather's strikes? I don't know. I don't think Conor's the greatest defensive boxer that we've seen. And I don't think Floyd gets enough credit for the power and the pop that he does have. Although he hasn't knocked out anybody in quite some time, and he's had known issues with his hands, I think, yeah, he has all the power needed to put away any of his opponents.
I think in Floyd's case, as far as something that his opponents could use against him, people that have a good jab or a decent jab or good timing on their punches feel a lot better with him than people that just go out there and try to muscle him or attack him.
I'm going to go even deeper than that, personality, mindset. He do his homework. Do not step in that ring unless he is absolutely sure he's going to win. Now, you can never be absolutely sure, but he feel this way. He's fighting them for a reason, and I'm sure that he got a plan A, B, and C.
If you look at a guy like Gennady Golovkin, there were the two that come to mind immediately, Golovkin and Lomachenko. So you look at Golovkin, there are a few times where he'll throw his jab past his opponent with the intention of using his lead elbow to pull the guard out the way. This is something that I've seen him use a few times. It's beautiful to watch because it looks like he's missed the jab, but it's clear that he's intending to do something different. He throws the jab and then he hooks their guard with his elbow and pulls back to hit with his right hand. The other thing we see Lomachenko do, and we saw that in his last fight, is he gets into those really nice flows where he's just kind of working on a guy, but then he'll come past with a hook and then he'll pull the guard down and club again with his right hand. Now, you've got to think Conor's looking at using all those kind of tactics, especially because stepping into the boxing ring, he's going to be trying to absorb as much as possible. He watched the Lomachenko fight. I know he did. He mentioned it in one of his interviews. So Conor, being the observant fighter that he is, he will be absorbing all those kind of things.
Bases. I think the mental factor is going to be big. Floyd is 49-0. He's been doing this his entire life. Comes from a generation of family of boxers. And Conor, although, he's not the most gloried and storied boxer there is, he really does believe in himself. And I know that's a powerful tool. I've seen a lot of guys use that to their advantage. So I'm interested to see how it's going to play out. It's hard for me as a striker and a kid that grew up doing boxing and karate to doubt Floyd's dominance, I guess, in this fight. I think Floyd has all the tools to make a statement. But as an MMA guy, as a MMA coach and MMA striker, I'll be cheering for Conor.